Now, Erie's premier podcast. News about music, health, and what's happening. It's Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance.
Well, the mission of the ALS Association is to discover treatments and a cure for ALS and to serve, advocate for, and empower people affected by ALS to live their lives to the fullest. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is a progressive neurodegenerative disease. It affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. There is no cure for ALS yet. Now, last year in 2023, I learned a great deal about ALS when me and the Massing sisters did a benefit in July of 2023 and gave all the proceeds of this benefit to ALS. Now, this was indeed an eye-opener to me to learn that ALS causes motor neurons to degenerate over time till they eventually die. When this happens, the brain can no longer initiate and control muscle movement. When voluntary muscle action is progressively affected, people may lose the ability to speak, to eat, to move, and breathe. It truly is debilitating. ALS was identified back in 1869 by a French neurologist and became widely known international in 1939 when it ended the career of one of baseball greats, Lou Gehrig. And so for many years, ALS, and still is commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Podcast 31 is ALS Journeys, Our Voices of Strength. I welcome to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814 dear friends of mine, Stacy Schwabendorf and Urban Behringer, who spearhead the ALS walk in Erie. Both of them have emotionally and have been heartbroken by this disease. Welcome to the show, you two.
Good morning.
You know, and we've done this before. We did this last year, too, so we're back in session, but we're in a new facility on the 11th floor of the Renaissance Center. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Stacy, you say to me, I've been on this floor. Tell me more. Let's go back.
Oh, boy. Okay, so on the 11th floor was the state representatives and state internal revenue offices, and my dad was a investigator for the internal revenue office. And there were times when my mom, as a nurse, was working during the day, and often in between switching kids from Hammett to up here at the Renaissance Center on 10th Street, we would get an opportunity to come up here and hang out with my dad for a while. And we would run the halls and go up and down the copper elevators. And
Now listen, Stacy, does the 11th floor still look the same?
No.
No.
Not that I remember.
Oh, okay.
But it's probably the paint and stuff is different. The windows, probably newer.
And the peanut guy's gone.
The peanut guy is gone.
How about you, Urban? Do you remember the Baldwin building?
Just a peanut
Just the
area.
Because
Never
it always smelled really, really good.
Really, really good.
Didn't it? Well, I know that they're getting set to do some major renovations here. It has been purchased, and a gentleman has a vested interest in passionately taking it back to its earlier earlier years. So
I do have one question.
Yes.
Not to interrupt, but
No.
do they have that? Do they still have a theater here?
Yes, it's
Okay.
down on the first floor.
Okay, because from what I do remember, all those tapestries and the beautiful murals, and I think that those were preserved.
I'm hoping. I haven't been, but I know that down on the
Okay.
lower floor there is a theater, and I can't remember. It's I want to say in all seriousness, but I don't think it is.
I don't
But it's
know.
something, there is a theater.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure of that. So Stacy and Urban, last year we get together. You actually asked if, the Massing sisters could come together with your organization and raise some money, and we certainly did. And it was a fabulous event. Around $10,000 worth of money was raised for ALS and for your walk. So I spent quite a bit of time with both of you. So I wanted you on this year to talk again about your personal experiences with ALS. So, Stacy, let's discuss the role that you and Urban are playing right now for the ALS Association. Are you both running the walk? Is there, or
The chapter is taking the spearhead of it. We're doing the local, as far as the baskets, stuff like that. But they're more or less handling it out of Pittsburgh.
So you are part of Cindy's Crusaders. We'll
Yes.
talk more about that. What is the name of your walk
Our
unit over
our
there?
team is the Lou Can Do team.
The Lou Can Do. I love it. I love it.
And that is actually inspired because Lou was a Navy CB and retired as a CB, and CBs can do.
And absolutely. I had Dr. Denny Wojtek on a couple weeks ago and did an entire podcast with him, and he was a CB.
Okay.
So he gave me all the rundown, and it
Yes.
is all about can do.
Yes.
So take us through the beginnings of Lou's battle. Like,
Yes.
when did things start to change? What are some of the signs?
Well,
Tell me your story.
it was kind of interesting because we were together planned on running the Marine Corps Marathon. And that was going to be in 2013. And he was so excited and so into it. I mean, he went from, it was all about dieting, and we
Very
were,
physical.
correct. And
Okay.
we were running, getting up to about 8 miles 3 days a week, and really, really working hard. And what was odd was he was losing a lot of weight. And I just assumed it was because he wasn't eating any junk food, and it was all, his protein, and he was watching.
Yeah.
And then what I noticed the most was I went to put my arms around him. He was kind of a thick guy, and I could actually put my arms all the way around him. And I was like, wow, what
Mhm.
are you losing? You cannot be losing this much weight. I wasn't losing, anything. And so one day we were at the reserve center because, he drilled at the reserve center, and we were lifting weights, and he just dropped a weight like nobody's business. That was it. He never, ever did that ever happen. And he just laughed about it. And I'm like, nobody just drops a weight, when they're lifting. So we talked to some healthcare people up at the VA, and that's when we were told to go and have an EMG,
Yep.
which pretty much,
So did they, because I've been told that ALS, first off, they think it's a host of other things.
yes.
There's about 12 different things that they
That
have
it
to
could
go
be.
through before they'll diagnose it as ALS.
ALS.
And
right.
it's hard to talk to talk like this to regular people who aren't ailing. But the scary thing is, like, they say carpal tunnel, because you're losing feelings,
That ability in your
you're getting numbness. The other thing that
Lyme disease.
Lyme disease is a big one because it has similar neuro, physical
Problems, yes.
problems. So it is scary because then you're thinking, oh man, today my hands are tingling. Oh my gosh, because it is super scary.
Sure.
And when we went finally and they said, you don't have carpal tunnel, you have ALS.
So was that what he was telling you? He had carpal tunnel the entire time.
Basically, yeah, I think
Mhm.
he
Didn't want you to
believed it.
worry.
He
Yep.
believed it, that he had carpal tunnel. He was in denial. He didn't, even if they mentioned for him to go and get the EMG and let's see if, you don't have something different. He was like, I'm fine. I'll just have carpal tunnel surgery. So you go to the surgeon, and the surgeon says, I'm not doing any surgery until we do a few more tests.
We figured out. Did you have to go out of town for testing?
No, we did not. We were
Right here.
Yep.
Interesting. So then you find out that he has ALS. Now, is this the time when light bulb goes off? I need to know what's going on with this disease.
Well, unfortunately, he was just, unfortunately, when I say for me, I panicked and had an attack and was taken
Sure.
by ambulance. It was like about 4 days after we got the news. I don't know, your system just breaks down. You can't believe it.
Right.
And then for him, he was just optimistic. He was like, it's going to be fine. I'm fine. And he kept running.
Kept doing all his
Everything
regular
he could.
activities and just
When he started to lose feeling in his hands, he started wearing wristbands so he could still lift. I mean, the optimism is amazing.
Very,
isn't
very
it?
positive.
Yes.
About what
And
was going on.
But for the caregivers, not so much.
Right. So, how was that progression then? Did it take time, months, years?
For Lil, they told us, well, see, and that's a problem because basically I think the general time from diagnosis to, you perish, it's like supposedly 2 to 5 years, mostly 2. But if you don't get diagnosed, you don't
You don't know.
necessarily. Right.
And then don't have that amount of time.
Exactly. So
Okay.
he was about a year and a half where he's just really started to, decline. And then he still, till the day of his death, he still walked. But my guess is he just stopped breathing. His
Right.
lungs just didn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that was about a year and a half after diagnosis. In 2012, he passed.
Now, Urban, you had the same situation with your wife. Now,
Somewhat, yeah.
Tell us the background of her diagnosis. When did you start noticing that things weren't right?
First started in March of 16, and it was speech. We were at a family function, and they said, "She okay? She's not." And I go, "We have a doctor's appointment." They first fear was possibly a stroke or something, because
So it was affecting her speech first and foremost.
yes. And then probably 2 months later, she was losing her mobility. Her legs would give out, couldn't hold things, and then it just progressed from there.
So how long did it take for a diagnosis for Cindy?
About 9 months,
See, that does.
9 to 12 months, because they had to do all the different tests. We went to a couple doctors here. We went to Cleveland Clinic, and we ended up in Pittsburgh, and they were wonderful. But they had a ALS unit.
In
So-
Pittsburgh.
So they knew exactly
What was going
what
on?
tests,
Yeah.
and and once we got together with the ALS Association, they were wonderful. They're saying, you don't need this now, but get it. So you're accustomed to it. She's accustomed to it, like a wheelchair.
That's what I was going to
stuff
say.
like that.
What are some of the things that ALS is?
They have a loaner closet that they work with Blackburns
Okay.
in Erie.
Gotcha.
And they have things here for Erie area people that
So
they can
Blackbirds
use.
is so
They can
there.
use,
There's
yes.
different things. What type of things?
Wheelchairs. The big thing that we used was called a pivot board, and it's just a round disc that spins so the person can stand on it, like getting out of a wheelchair, and then spin around and sit in a wheelchair,
Ah, okay.
rather than the walk, the shuffle to try and turn around.
How about you, Stacy? What kind of things was Lou using?
We were fortunate because he never, the ALS affects different parts of the body. So he was
Right.
more upper body, and then he was lower. So he did walk. They have utensils you can try to use that are wider and bigger for people that can't grasp or grab on. We had the bathroom redone and had the grab bars, but still all that, because he didn't have, a whole lot of strength in his upper body. Those weren't very helpful, but they were helpful to me because I could hold on, so I could hold on to him.
Yeah, right. How about treatments? Were there any treatments available?
There's some in 6 years removed from the medical end of it.
Right.
They had a lot of stuff that they were trying in the 16 to 18 years. And from what I understand, they are making improvements to slow the progression. And right now, that's really what the family wants. So
Is to slow down that. Are we still looking at a 2 to 5 year lifespan?
I haven't seen anything that they've changed that. And I'm sure they're not going to want to do that until they're sure. It's better to be prepared for the worst. And because when we started looking at online, Google, we had no clue what it was. So,
And that's the thing what people do now. Immediately, you put in your symptoms. Next thing you know,
self-diagnose.
yes, doing the old self-diagnosis stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how things start.
Yeah,
And was she diagnosed in Pittsburgh or Cleveland?
Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would go down there for a while, but then the traveling got to be too much.
Too difficult.
Because she couldn't, her mobility went. And at that point, that ride was just too long.
Too much.
Then if you have to wait at the hospital to get in, it just makes for too long of a day.
So from diagnosis to her passing, how long was that then for you?
About 2.
About 2 years.
Yeah.
So 2 to 5 is what.
Right.
Yeah.
Were there, did either one of you go through any counseling? Because at that point,
No.
no, you just trudged right along and.
So for me, I didn't have the ALS Association in Pittsburgh at that time, like 2012. The MS Association here was kind of handling people that were diagnosed with ALS.
So what you're saying back then, there wasn't, and
Not really, no.
wow.
So we didn't even have a closet for that they wouldn't, not that they wouldn't give you something,
Sure.
but their primary concern was people with MS. So I did go to a couple of group sessions with Lou. And when they discussed the ALS, it was so awful, so scary. I didn't want to be a part of it. I mean, I'm telling you, because
Right,
you
Stace?
just know, you're just told that this is just going to keep getting worse and worse until he's gone. And you don't want to face those kind of things. So I probably should have had counseling, but I didn't.
Well, that's because you just were doing what you needed to do. How many
Right.
times, as individuals, we have to take care of our loved ones,
Right.
and we just step right up and do what we need to do. It's interesting. Go ahead, Stacey.
I would like to say that, and for the person who's diagnosed, like when you're talking about taking Cindy to Pittsburgh, I took Lou to Buffalo because
Was it VA? Wasn't there a VA in Buffalo?
No,
or-
we actually
no?
went to Buffalo General, or I don't even remember anymore.
Mhm.
Sunny something. Sorry to say that. But we were going to look at a trial. And while we were there, they do a physical and this and that. Well, that time Lou was still driving. So then the doctor said, you're not going to be able to drive anymore. When you get back to Pennsylvania, I'm going to have to talk to your primary care doctor and remove you from having a license.
Right.
That was devastating to him. He was 55 years old. And now we're driving back from Buffalo. He wouldn't let me drive. And now I'm panicked. I'm scared to death because you don't know, because if something happened with his legs
Right.
and he couldn't press, the
Right.
experience was horrifying. Here we go. We're both going to just go off into the sunset. But he
God,
made it. And then, we went and he couldn't drive. And that was very depressing.
It's interesting to hear both of your stories because they're very, very different, but the disease is the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds as though, Cindy, those progressions of not being able to do all those different
They
things.
leapfrogged. 'It was, 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 being in the umbrella of it, it wasn't fast. But when you look back, it was.
It was fast.
Yeah.
Both of you have been through so much. So this is why you're involved.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm involved because I want more people to know how debilitating this is. And are there any achievements that you've heard of, maybe programs or something different within these last couple of years, being with the ALS Association that you'd like to talk about? Do you know?
Firsthand, no, but I do know, I hear the words ALS a lot more. It seems more people are being diagnosed with it, hopefully earlier, so the medicines to slow the progression can be used. The local chapter does come into Erie, I think, once a month. And I don't know if they have meetings or if people come in to see them, but I do know they come into Erie. I think they go to Hammett, and
Okay.
they have something at Hammett.
Well, I was actually kind of shocked that, I mean, it goes back to 1869.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago, And I read that ALS is considered a very rare disease, but more than 5,000 people are diagnosed with it every year. I saw that on your Facebook page,
Yeah.
Urban. And we certainly need more treatments and a cure. I just think that having this walk that you both are so involved in, and raising these funds to help with research, but it's just not research we're raising funds for, right?
Right.
Right.
So there's, help. They can get you certain items that you need. I think most importantly is to be an advocate for your family members that have to deal with it, because both of you have dealt with it. So, Stacy, did you start working with the ALS Association right after Lou had passed, or?
No, I didn't. Personally, I don't think I could move for 2 years. It was kind of crazy. And they weren't as involved yet. So by like 2016 is when I jumped on board, and we did the walk with the Highmark Walk for the Community.
At the peninsula.
At the
Peninsula.
Peninsula. Okay.
And that's how I got involved.
And so now you have your very own walk.
We have our very own walk.
How about you, Urban? When did you start becoming involved in the ALS Association?
Basically, right when she was diagnosed, the timing worked it that we were there, we were dealing with them already because of the loaner closet. So that kind of all fell in together, timing-wise.
And I know that there are several people that have talked at your walk, and any stories of any other individuals that you find to be very courageous and struggling with ALS.
I just recently haven't met personally, but met a woman named Sarah, and she would have been here when you asked about what other things are going on. I wasn't really aware of how many things they do in Pittsburgh. Now tonight is Lou Gehrig's
Is it a
night.
baseball game?
Baseball game for
Nice.
the Pirates. So we have a lot of people in Erie that are there, and Sarah's there tonight, and she is unbelievable. She gets involved, goes to Washington. She
To
has
advocate.
to advocate. She has ALS, and she says she's gonna do trials and she's gonna figure this all out. She has an amazing attitude. I cannot wait to meet her personally. She does have a team in the walk this year.
Nice.
And so I'm excited about that. And the one other thing I want to bring up about the walk, well, there's probably a lot of things, but what I have read historically, because this is very interesting, but we have our families and our friends are very involved. And Erie 814 is amazing.
A great
for-
community.
Great community for everything, right? But what they say about the ALS advocacy is some people don't continue being an advocate or will walk for that disease because there's no hope. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like if somebody has, say, I mean, not to minimize it, but if somebody has breast cancer or, even now pancreatic cancer, they're finding cures every day. So people are willing to get out there and, like we've got a cure in this and we're going to walk in memory and honor and this and that. But in ALS, I guess because it's so scary and because there still isn't anything that stops this or cures it, people tend to kind of fall off. And it makes it hard for us to
Right. Like there's not a focus on it.
Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. I just recently read that because it's hard for me, like say this year, and if anybody wants to support me and be on my team, that'll be great. But this year, the Navy, my husband's unit, NMCB 23, has a reunion in Altoona the same weekend. So I'm going to have about 15 friends who aren't going to walk. They can't because they're going to be at the reunion. And now they'll support me, I'm sure, donations and financially, but I need team members on my team. And
I'm sure you could all use more people to walk.
Exactly. And so we, you don't necessarily see strangers. It's our families, our closest friends who come to this walk every year faithfully.
And
I know they do.
Yeah.
we do have new groups, but that's only because they
were affected as well.
right.
Correct.
So it's nice to have more groups, but not for that reason.
Yes.
Get that. I get that, Urban.
I can
How
say
about-
that right now we have 121 participants. so
That's
far,
very good.
and 22 teams.
That's perfect.
But we had the same. No, last year we had 148 people walk, and we still had 22 teams. So we would like to get a few more teams
There's
if
your 15.
possible.
That's your 15 missing.
No, this is teams actually.
Teams. So how can they get involved?
Well, we have information being passed around by everywhere. We have a new billboard out. I just saw it.
Nice.
One in Wesleyville. I don't know if there's. I'm
I
sure
haven't
there's.
seen them yet.
Yeah, there's probably
I
one in.
believe, let's back up here. I
to
believe
bring that
last
up.
year on my, because Route 20 is my stop to get out to Girard, because that's where I live. The two of you were on the billboard.
Yes, we were.
That was awesome. It was
Yes.
so good to see the two of you.
I didn't know it was up there. I drove by and I'm like, wait a second.
That looks like me. But that's great.
And you were the one that told me.
I know.
I didn't know.
I am like, all of a sudden I'm driving like, look at my crew. There they are. Holy smokes, there's Stacy and Urban. But so important because both of you have been deeply affected. So this walk is very, very important to you. And I like what you said, Stace, about, there is no cure. And so there's not a lot of hope for people. And, there can be trials, but that's why raising money is important. So you can do more trials and figure this out. I was just really shocked on when it really started, and it was identified back in 1869. I was like, I really thought this was something that was in the 1960s or, of course, Lou Gehrig. So that'd be, 1939 or whatever. But for both of you, what advice would you give someone newly diagnosed with ALS or their family members? What type of advice? Stacy?
Lean on family and friends,
Right.
both caregiver and the patient.
Yeah. Do what you can to make some really quick, fast memories. We did that. We went back to, Lou had wanted to go back to Hawaii because he was in Hawaii as a Navy person. And he said that, at that time they did a lot more partying than they did Navy. And and he didn't remember half
He
of
sounds
Hawaii.
like what? I never met Lou Stace, but he seems like my kind of guy.
Oh yeah, he's your kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So you
that's-
went to make memories.
right.
Now you know this is going on. It's like, let's make some great memories together.
Yeah, we had parties. You had your family together a lot.
Yeah.
I had my family and friends. We had, I don't know, 3 or 4 parties called the Luau, and he was at 3 of them.
The luau. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
And
So, and lean on the ALS Association, too.
Yes.
They can certainly
Yeah.
and
help you.
the other thing too is for anybody out there that are veterans, there are, I guess, in the National Registry, there's 1,600 veterans. That's just in the registry. There's a lot of people who won't use the VA, but they should if they can, because they can help tremendously with the federal funds that they have versus a civilian who has to mortgage their home or have parties to raise money sometimes, or things
To
like
get
that.
the things that they
So
need.
if you are a veteran and you might think that you have that, you should certainly reach out. And as far as I know right now, speaking to the Erie VA, the social work service, they had said that they are currently following 5 veterans who have been diagnosed.
That's with ALS.
Right. And I don't know how many. Last year was Erie County was 31 people that Pittsburgh was following. Now this year I don't know that. I didn't get the information.
Right.
I have heard of at least 2 in the last 6 months that have been diagnosed with it. And I've passed on the chapter's information. I said, don't hesitate, get a hold of them, and they'll walk you through the process. Dealing with Blackburns as far as the loaner closet or through their chapter in Pittsburgh.
Nice. So let's talk about the walk.
Okay.
Cindy's Crusaders. Lou's
Can do.
Lou can do. Perfect. So when is the date of the walk?
June 22nd?
June 22nd.
Yes.
And it's at Jeriot.
Yes.
So it's at the park.
UPMC Park.
UPMC Park. Oh, by the way, thank you for inviting me to come down and sing the national
That's
anthem
right.
before the
We-
walk. I'm very excited.
appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I love that. And it's just, I last year working side by side with you and your team of people to raise funds for ALS was just, I just didn't know. I didn't know
Yeah.
like how debilitating and how quickly somebody succumbs to something.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
it's so hard because, even though we have these resources, you might one day, be using a wheelchair, and the next thing you know, they can't even use a wheelchair. They can't hold their head up. My husband could not hold his head up. We tried neck braces.
That's what we had to
It
do.
was awful. And, it's like as soon as you get something, you think, okay, this is going to give us a little bit of a break for a minute. And then 3 days later, all of a sudden, the nerves in the neck are going, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's really tough. And that's probably too why it's so expensive, because it's hard to tell, equipment is expensive. Medical care is
Yes.
so expensive.
It breaks my heart to see
Yeah.
a person go through that. Like, but it's just heartbreaking. So the event, let's say you register at 8 a.m.
Correct.
and then the walk begins at 10.
Right.
And
We have a national anthem and an opening ceremony,
nice.
and there are jump castles or whatever. The Seawolves organization has been wonderful to us, allowing us to use the park, picnic area, the jump castles.
For
They
the
have-
kids.
Yeah, for the kids. And
And there's a lot of them.
Oh, I love it.
the sea wolf comes, and we had the otter
Nice.
last year, so I'm hoping that they'll be there again. I'm sure they will.
Uh-huh.
So we are very grateful to the Seawolves organization.
So do you walk around
Basically around the stadium.
around the stadium?
Right.
Yeah. and then back in for afterwards.
So-
There'll be not gift baskets, auction.
Auction items that day for for people.
So, and the ALS Association will be in town to speak.
Yes.
Yes.
They'll probably have 5 or 6
Mm-hmm.
people in for that
Right.
from the our chapter.
Right. It's Stacy Schwabendorf and Urban Behringer from the ALS Association Walk, Podcast 32, ALS Journeys, Voices of Strength. And wow, it does take a lot of strength. And I just feel the emotion in the room with both of you on what it takes to have that kind of strength. And I know that the both of you love music. You go out to see all the bands. This is how we all started hanging around and hanging out together. And so I decided to log on to see if there was a musician that may have had ALS. And I looked, and there is a gentleman, his name was Leadbelly. And if you look him up, he's an interesting character. He was an American folk and blues singer, notable for strong vocals, and he was a virtuoso on the 12-string guitar. He did folk standards like In the Pines, Goodnight Irene, Midnight Special. I'm sure you both know Midnight Special, Cottonfield's Boll Weevil. Well, Leadbelly styled himself as the king of the 12-string guitar. And despite his use of other instruments, by the way, he played the accordion. For all you Polish people out there. The most enduring image of Leadbelly as a performer was wielding his unusually large Stella 12-string guitar. Now, Bob Dylan credits Leadbelly for getting him into folk music. In his Nobel Prize lecture, Bob Dylan said, quote unquote, somebody I'd never seen before handed me a Leadbelly record with the song Cotton Fields on it. And that record changed my life right then and there, transported me into a world I'd never known. It was like an explosion went off. He said, like I'd been walking in darkness, and all of a sudden the darkness was illuminated. It was like somebody laid their hands on me. I must have played that record over and over again, hundreds of times. He also pays homage to Leadbelly in a song called Song to Woody on his very first self-entitled album. In 1944, Leadbelly went to California, where he recorded strong sessions for Capitol Records, and later he returned to New York City. In 1949, he had a regular radio show. It was called Folk Songs of America, broadcast on WNYC in New York City. Later that year, he began a tour of Europe and a trip to France, but he fell ill before his completion, and he was diagnosed with ALS. Leadbelly was the first American country blues musician to achieve success in Europe. Wow. So he passed away from ALS in New York City in 1949 at the age of 61. And there's a great quote from him. He says, "We all are in the same boat, brother. You can rock too far to the right, you'll fall in the water. You rock too far to the left, you fall in the same water." And it's just wet on both sides. And I read that. It really meant a lot to me.
Yes.
So we just want to let our listeners know that, you can come on down and support of the ALS Walk, right? Absolutely. On June 22nd at the ballpark. Check in 8 a.m. The walk kicks off at 10. And all monies raised will fuel the mission of ALS, and that includes care services. Essential assistance for people with ALS and their families at every stage of the disease. That also are involved in research. I found out they are funding over 150 laboratories across the globe right now. That's huge.
Yes,
That's a lot of work going on there. And then there's the advocacy, like you talk about going to Capitol Hill, enacting policies that improve the lives of people with ALS and their families nationwide. Right. That's so important. People don't realize that you have to advocate to get the federal funding and the things that you need in order to either find a cure or at least give you more time with your loved ones.
Right.
And then there's also stewardship. They meet all the standards of the Giving Alliance and other, charity evaluations. So this walk means a lot.
Yes. It really does. Yes, it does.
It means a lot. And if you can't walk but just want to come down and support, or of some family that is dealing with this disease right now, have them come down too, because we're all in this together, and being supportive of one another, because the journey is rough. It's rough for all of you that have to put up with it. So, Stacy, before I close out the show, at 9 o'clock, it's Bob and Alice in the polka show. So I'm wondering, there's a polka song that you might want to get out to your family. You don't know any? How about
know the
you?
names.
You don't know like E-I-E-I-E-I-O, G-I-G-I-G-I Joe. But Bob and Alice are on at 9 o'clock, and
There's a polka song about being in Hawaii,
oh yes, there is,
and I like that one.
That's great. I want to thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you very
We'll see you
much.
down at the walk on June 22nd at the ballpark. Registration again, 8 o'clock, kickoff at 10. We'll see everybody there. Thanks for enlightening us.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
letting
very
us,
much.
us know how important it is for people to know that, you're working hard. The ALS Association is working hard to help those families in need. Everybody, have a great week in the 814.
You've been tuned in to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance on 88.5 and 102.7 LECOM Radio.